Hey guys, what's up? I'm Ombarus and welcome to another episode. For those who don't know, I'm a game developer and I'm working on developing my own game as an indie independent developer. But before that, I was working for a game company and I have some experience in game development and I'm here to share this with you guys. And today, what I wanted to talk about is something that I haven't done while I was working in a game development company, mainly game design. You see, I think I'm a good programmer, but developing game is not just about coding away and finishing a program. It's about developing something and designing it. And today I'd really like to ask you guys listening, if you are a game designer or if you've designed your own game, I'd really like some inputs about how do you get your design juice flowing? How do you get from like an early prototype to the whole final product? Do you see everything in your head or do you write it down on paper? Do you like to make spreadsheets? How do you come up with the design and how do you iterate on your design? Because these are kind of things I've had to figure out this week. And let me tell you, it's harder than I thought. I thought designing, programming, like the physics engine for a racing game is really hard and is a really big challenge and it's very difficult. But then making the cars run like a Ferrari or a Bugatti Veyron or something is, just tweaking some numbers. And anyone can do that, right? But over the years, I've come to realize that there's a reason why game designers are kind of the rock star of the gaming industry. It's actually really hard to get a good game design. It's easy to put a bunch of features together, but to make them fun and tweak them just the right way, it's something hard to describe, but it's very, very difficult to achieve. And again, as usual, to find some inspiration, I started looking at what are the level designs, what are the enemy designs of my principal inspiration for the game I'm developing. So I looked at Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup, I looked at NetHack, and I looked at like the branching structures of all the levels in DCSS, and what are the branches, what do they represent, how deep does the dungeon goes, how many levels in total there are, and how many enemies in total there are. And then I look at NetHack and I did the same thing. I looked at in what ways are the mine different and what does going to the mine accomplish beside like being something separate from the main branch. And even though this week I've been spending a lot of time trying to ramp up my game design, I feel it's not something you can rush. It's something you have to iterate over. You have to think about it. You have to scribble on it. You have to play the game in your head and try to figure out what it is that will make the game unique and fun to play and will tie everything together. You need to, even though I'm not planning to have a very big story, I still have to think about what elements make sense. You're in NetHack, you're going down some kind of dungeon. It kind of makes sense that there's a branch that's a mine because you're underground, and then it makes sense that at some point you stop being in a dungeon and you enter like the gates of hell and you're in Gehenna because you're going so far deep and it's related to the story. I mean, it looks simple, but it's just kind of these tiny things that I think can make a game really stick with people when they play through it. In the very first episode, I talked about this new project I wanted to start. I showed that I've been taking notes and writing things down in a variety of ways. I've been taking notes on papers, and then when I'm satisfied with it or when it's getting too much for the paper, I move on to the machine and then I put notes in my notepad. It's just to throw ideas out there so that eventually I can come back to it and try to filter the good from the bad. And I'm at the point now where this is what I have to do. So that's what I've been doing this week, is going through these lists, reminding myself of all the stuff, the themes you have in science fiction, the kind of civilization you might encounter, and I'm trying to come up with the bare minimum of things I could implement to make this game interesting. I've been trying to put them in a kind of a cleaner way so that I can actually have some kind of design document I can refer to whenever I want to add something new. And so I've been doing this in the Google spreadsheets. And so in green are the things that I've already implemented. And then the other stuff is things I think I could add fairly easily to make the game into a complete system. As you can see, there's a lot of stuff missing, but I haven't come up with all the stats yet, but it's starting to take shape. And I put in yellow things I might not be sure about, and this page is only for the items and the ships and the consumable I want to add. Then I created another tag for like the crafting and what the recipes could be and all this kind of stuff. Then I made another tab where I could think about the story, not necessarily just like the text or the quests and stuff like that, but also like what kind of races I want to implement and what do they represent and who they're going to be and all this kind of stuff. And then I have this tab I added for the level design, which are what kind of things I can find in the level that to make it interesting. And for this, I based myself a little bit on notes I took from NetHack. So I looked at NetHack and I was like, okay, yes, NetHack has rooms. You move around in the level and there's doors and there's stuff. But even though it's a space, I should at least have some interesting stuff that the player can encounter beside like enemies. Otherwise, it's probably missing something. And so I thought, is there equivalence, or can I have at least as many things? And when you look at it, you realize there's not that many floor items. I was looking at really the different types of items you can find that are really unique and provide some kind of different gameplays. And I thought, well, I'm going to need the same amount of thing if I want to make my game interesting. So I started thinking about what can I add that's not enemy ships, but that can make the game interesting. So I already have the planets and the suns, but I thought, okay, I can add asteroids, nebulas, these are classics. But I thought, okay, what else can I add? Well, in NetHack you can find chests or stuff like that in the middle of nowhere. So maybe I can add disabled ship that you can stumble upon and then you can loot for more stuff. And then, okay, traps. Well, traps can be anomalies. Maybe you encounter something that corrupts your system or that holds you down and shuts down your engine for a couple of turns. I've been just looking in general, looking up information about space, what kind of cool stuff you can find in space, and trying to see if they would fit into the narrative I'm trying to build. Because that's really what I've been doing this week, is trying to build some narrative. That means I have to think of it in an iterative kind of way. And I thought, okay, starting with a small number of levels, with a few races and a minimum number of ships is going to be probably the way to go. And then I'll expand. I can add more level. I can add more branches. And as long as I have a subset of all the features I kind of want to implement, I think it's a good place to start. And that's what I've been doing this week. So I've completely redesigned my JSONs. And honestly, there wasn't so much code involved because I knew where I was going with this when I developed it the first time. It's just that I hadn't scaled it. I was just doing tests. So I just had JSONs of different levels for testing a lot of planets, a lot of ships, a lot of, different stats for different ships and stuff like that. But they were all prototypes. Now I've really organized it. So now I've created this main folder in my levels with all the 11 main level of the game. And then I have these branches. And I decided that each branches for now would have only 3 levels, because in NetHack, each branch has anywhere between like 3 and 4 levels. So I thought 3 is a good number to start with. I started creating more JSONs for the ships too. So these are the kind of testing ships I had, but now I've broken them up in folders, and I have 3 ships for each races, with the humans having a little bit more variation because they're the first one you encounter, and I wanted to have a little bit more. Like, I wanted like a jelly type of enemy that doesn't really fight back, so you can just get to learn the game a little bit on the first level, and then after that you start encountering like scouts. And I've been trying to tweak the numbers. I started thinking about the frigate. But right now the numbers are kind of like just stuff I threw out there, and I really don't know if it's gonna work or not. I just pulled them out of my head. So like the chances of each ship's dropping stuff, I mean, it makes sense. For example, I know that the frigate is never gonna drop a scout buddy, but has a chance of dropping a frigate buddy. But is 10% a lot? Is it too little? I don't really know. And it's the same thing with everything. Like I know at some point I want the player to encounter a converter level 2, but is this chance of dropping per frigate high or low? I don't know. My idea was that the frigate would be kind of a utility ship, so they have more utility slots, so that if you want to make a build with a lot of utilities, then you would go with a frigate build. And that means that probably you want them to have a higher chance. When you kill a frigate, you want them to have a higher chance of dropping utilities. And as opposed to, like, if you're hitting a battleship, then you want the battleship to have a lot of weapons. And so probably killing a battleship has a greater chance of dropping some weapons. But for now, I don't have that many items. As you can see, I made it so that every item in the game has a chance to be dropped from every ships in the game. It's just that certain things are very, very low. The chance that a human ship would drop an alien converter is like 1 in 1,000. You'd basically have to kill 1,000 human ships to get a chance to get an alien converter. But if you look at another race, then the chance that they drop a human converter is very low, but the chance that they drop a converter specific to their race is a little bit higher. Once again, is this too high, too low? I have no idea. And right now, after I did all that, I installed the game, and in the last few days, all I've been doing is just playing the game, and then seeing what works and what doesn't. And right now, I know that the enemy ships are kind of too powerful. They're basically equipped just like you are. So that means that you have about a 50-50% chance of winning the fight or losing it. And that means that if you meet 2 enemies at the same time, you have absolutely no chance. And that's the interesting thing about the design. I think a lot of programmers underestimate how important it is to test your game and iterate your design. Now I've been playing my game for a few hours every day. And I do mean playing it. I don't mean like doing tests or trying to find bugs, or I mean just playing it, trying to get to the end, trying to beat the game. And it's made me realize a whole bunch of issues, because a lot of programmers think that if I implemented a feature, it does what it's supposed to do, then it's perfect and complete. But it's not true. If it's irritating to the player, if there's a little something that makes it just annoying to do, for me, crafting the missile, you have to use a lot of missile in the early game, and crafting them is very painful on the touchscreen. And just this is probably enough to push any potential player away from my game. And so I've been trying to iterate over my design and improve the user experience, so that when I get this good user experience, I can concentrate on the game design and see if it's really the game design that's flawed, or if it just needs a few tweaks to make it just perfect. If you have something to remember from this video, is this: test your game, play with it, not as a programmer, not as a game designer, just play with it and try to have fun. And then, after a couple of time playing it, you'll come up with some ideas to improve it, and then try to work on these ideas. And that's what I'm gonna probably keep doing for the next couple of weeks, while at the same time I'm working on the UI and implementing maybe some new features. And I hope you guys have some tips and tricks to help me also work on my design. What do you do to help you iterate through your design? What do you do when you have this idea of having like 400 monsters in your game? Where do you start? How many do you implement to have a fun game at the beginning, and then work your way to like these 400 monsters you want to implement? I'd be really happy to hear about your inputs in the comment sections, and I hope this was somehow useful for you guys, and I'll wish you a happy week and see you guys in my next episode. Bye!